Hello and welcome to The Voice of Iron, and on this session, we'll be reading Dreams of Rain by Iron Smith. Tape 1. Today was a dream come true. I found something at work today, something that has taken me 5 steps closer to my goal all at once. The day started out like any other, clocking in at the Astra scrapyard, level 40 of the pyramid. Bill wasn't behind the front desk this time. Instead, a note was left about going off-site to collect a new wreck. I didn't give the note much thought, and just scanned my company card. Card accepted. Welcome back, Kitt. You are 2 minutes, 34 seconds early, the computer announced, clicking and whirring as it processed my entry. Well, you know me, I replied, knowing full well that it could not hear nor understand verbal commands, as I walked into the prep room. I saw none of my coworkers inside, just the empty suit lockers and tables, accented by the faintly flickering fluorescent lights mounted in the ceiling. The fainter hum of the vending machines in the back and rattle from the air units were the only sounds in the room, and I went about my routine of suiting up in my Astra scrapyard uniform, grabbing my palm jets, and heading over to the yard entrance. I stared out of the EMAG shielded entrance, looking at the easily 200-foot drop outside of it, and just as easily 200-foot plus ceiling above that. I checked my jets and, with a faint smile on my face, got a running start across the tile before leaping off of the outer platform and floating forward, weightless in the zero-G environment of the scrapyard proper. I spent my time grabbing the scrap Asterisk requested for reuse, setting aside pieces scrappers told us they were looking for, and bunching up any useless pieces for incineration. It was during my incineration rounds that I noticed something new had been brought in. I was 6 hours into my shift and had just finished hauling a scrap bin across the yard when something big was floated in through the airlock. It looked like a new cargo ship, a bit smaller than some of the wrecks we'd dealt with, but it was the design that caught my eye. Pushing off of the scrap bin I had been carrying, I aimed my hands behind me and gave a small impulse burst from my palm jets, sending me floating through the air closer to my destination. The atmosphere of the scrapyard blew past me as I flew, unimpeded by gravity. I only had to give a small burst from the jets here and there to avoid a few floating Astra car wrecks, discarded piping, and other debris. It wasn't long before I made it to the cargo ship, and on my final approach I flipped around, allowing myself to drift towards the thing feet first. There was a satisfying clang as the metallic boots latched onto the hull, and I began my slow walk around the wreck. She was smaller than most cargo vessels, couldn't have been bigger than 200 feet long. Yet, as I peeked inside of the torn-open hull, it seemed far more spacious than most. I had read recently in the news that Asterisk wanted to test a new, ultra-compact shipping vessel, something that could carry just as much as a conventional ship at a fraction of the docking space. But it was spectacular seeing it up close like this. I've always been a ship nut. It was the reason I signed up to work in the scrapyard in the first place, rather than the Argon mining stations or the asteroid drilling rigs. That said, I had to look around inside and see what was new. The cockpit had been trashed and her side was slashed open pretty badly, but the rest was intact. I was honestly surprised they had scrapped this, but it thankfully gave me an opportunity to check it out for myself. I demagnetized my boots and kicked off towards the engine room in the back, wanting to see what kind of propulsion system it used. The door was stuck open, figured, given the impact, but the room itself looked fine. A few control consoles here and there, hydrogen propulsion systems, but something else in the rear. My eyes widened as I looked over the cube-shaped object, bolted heavily between the internal portions of the thrusters and heat-shielded. Is that the bridge drive? I found myself asking aloud, trying to disconnect the wiring to get a better look. It had to be. A bridge drive is an essential part of every interstellar ship. Without it, space travel would take years, if not decades, to get from system to system. But bridge drives were huge. Even the most advanced models were typically 6 yards cubed at least. Yet, here was this cube, 3 yards square on all sides. I carefully detached it from its bolts and floated it out into the main cargo bay, looking the whole thing over. Sure enough, this thing was a bridge drive. The right shape, the right components, everything. I felt giddy as I realized how experimental this tech must be, but they'd scrapped it, which meant scrappers could pay for it when they came by at the end of the week. Luckily, I work here, so I wouldn't have to wait that long. It was nearly time for my break, so grabbing the drive, I kicked off the ship and floated towards the scrapper storage section, placing the drive inside the EMAG protected room slowly where it would be safe. After ensuring that it was stowed away, I headed towards the prep room balcony with a few short bursts from my jets, a smile stuck on my face. A bridge drive. This is exactly what I need to get out of here, I found myself saying aloud, spinning a little as I approached the door. One burst to slow me down and a quick flip to magnetize my feet to the balcony, and I was able to walk inside, bracing as gravity returned to my body. I wasted no time whatsoever. I didn't even demagnetize my boots until I was nearly to Bill's desk, trying to compose myself before walking up.
"Kid, missed you on the way in. How you doing?"
Bill asked, turning in his chair to face me. "Good. Great, actually," I replied to the rotund man. Bill was always cheery with us, definitely loved working here. He often joked that working in the zero-gravity of the yard was the only place that he could be fat and not feel it.
"Well, I'm glad to hear it. So, what brings you to Planet Bill at break time?"
he questioned, gesturing with false grandeur to his desk as he spoke, accenting the query with a small laugh. I was quick to reply, "Actually, it's another part I'd like to purchase. Something big I found out there."
"Oh yeah? Another Astro car part for that pet project of yours?"
he replied, his bushy eyebrows raising slightly. "Not exactly. You know that new cargo ship that came in today? I poked around inside of it for a while to see if there was anything usable, and I found a bridge drive, Bill. A compact, fully intact bridge drive." Bill's smile transformed into a look of confusion as he scratched his head, slightly upsetting his brown mullet in the process.
"You want a scrapped bridge drive? Kid, you know full well you can't afford something like that, even if we knew its original worth."
I'd been thinking about this moment for a very long time, and I'd always assumed that it would be years before it happened, so I wasn't about to let the opportunity slip. "I'll give you 30,000, I stated bluntly. Bill stared, his eyes seeming to bug out a bit as he slowly put down the mug he'd been holding. He realized how serious I was about buying it. He put another hand over his mouth, allowing his fingers to stroke his bushy mustache while he thought.
"Kid, that's got to be near all of your savings given how long you've worked for me,"
Bill eventually stated, looking up as he did so. My face remained dead serious, though I said nothing, letting my offer hang in the air heavily for a moment more.
"You know I'm not supposed to sell unappraised stuff. You know that better than some scrappers."
"I'll take the fall if we get in trouble," I responded quickly, reaffirming my position. 30,000 for the drive. After a moment more of hesitation, he sighed, sinking into his chair a little with a creak.
"Fine. 30,000 it is, and it's yours. You just better not get us reported for this," he offered, seeing just how hard I would go after this. "Thank you, Bill. You really are a lifesaver. I'll transfer the cash after my shift," I excitedly said, grabbing his hand and shaking it firmly. He was still a bit shocked, but loosened up with another thin smile. "Just don't go bankrupt on me, kid." I left quickly, jumping into the yard once more, doing a few celebratory flips as I flew through the yard, feeling the air across my face. I didn't care how much I'd just spent, nor did I care how insane Bill must think I am now. I finally had the last piece. That concludes today's reading, and thank you for listening to my voice.